Hello and welcome to the National Leadership Briefing. My name is Doug Sharp and I will be your host for today. Well, it is Friday, September the 6th, 2024, and I welcome you to this first briefing of the fall. Now, summer's behind us and we're all sort of retooling, getting used to being back at our desks. I invite you to focus in, just really settle in over the course of this next few months, because I believe here in our nation of Canada, it is going to get a little complicated. We've got some very interesting economic news coming on the horizon. We've got some very interesting opportunities to exercise our influence with a collective voice in government elections and with our local representatives. But we need to continue to come together on this first Friday of every month to remind ourselves about the things that we believe in collectively. For example, the principles that undergird the four pillars, and look for those opportunities and then execute with efficiency when we want to deploy. So this is very important that you're here today. I'm very thankful that you're here today and I have an opportunity to serve you. But let's get into the agenda for today's briefing so you know what we're going to be covering for the next hour. And I will make sure we get you out at the top of the hour as promised. Well, first of all, of course, we're going to be covering these very important principles that undergird the four pillars behind me. These are our rally points. These are the things that we want to be proficient in articulating to others. So I'm going to go over that again today, especially for those that are new on the briefing. We're also going to be touching on what we call the National Leadership Briefing Essential Videos. Now, for those of you who aren't familiar with that term, we have four basic videos that we encourage everyone to watch, not only just when you first come on the briefing, but review them on a regular basis, because these are the videos that remind us about who we are together, what we're doing here, and how we're doing it. And then we're also able to use these videos to share with other people to help articulate that message to others and encourage them to join us. So we're going to be reviewing those videos today just because it's a good idea to do that, but also because we're going to be taking two of the videos and we're going to be referencing projects that have spun out of those two videos that are going to help you. First of all, we've got the Sphere Authority training video that speaks to the various governments or spheres of authority in our society. We, of course, have civil government, everybody's familiar with, but there's also church government, self-government, the government of the individual, and family government. Well, we have a very important segment today that's going to help families and governments of the family in society, because we've got someone who's going to help the men in those families and fathers by providing you some extra tools. So stick around for that. That's a very important segment. And then next, we're also going to be talking about another project that I'm going to be introducing you to, which refers specifically or has come out of the U training video. You know, as if you've seen this video before, we encourage you, first of all, as a participant and someone who engages with us on the briefing, we encourage you to fully understand and that you need to hear from the Lord as to where he wants you to be and what he wants you to do. We believe that you are saved for a reason. We believe that you as a Christian here in our nation are called to do very specific things, and he, the Lord, is going to share that with you, that information with you, and he's going to help guide you on the road ahead. Now, once you discover this thing about yourself that I know God has for you, that project that I'm referring to that we're going to be talking about later, this is going to help make you discoverable by others. So you discover what God has for you to do here on this earth and in our nation and in your families and in your communities, whatever that call is. And then we're going to help you become discoverable by others, because this is not a single person sport. It's a team sport we're all engaged in. And we want to make sure that people know who you are and what your call is and how you can serve, again, your family, your broader community, and the nation of Canada. So that's the next project we're going to be reviewing today. And then we're going to be joined by a friend of mine who is a staffer on Parliament Hill, works in the Senate, and is an individual, has recently published a book that's going to put some really great tools in your hands and some information in your hands on citizen engagement. There are some very interesting perspectives that he presents as someone who's not only had years of work in advocacy with not-for-profits, but also as someone who is a real change maker on Parliament Hill. He works in the system that changes our laws and our perspectives on things that happen in our nation from the top down. but I want you to hear this out. This is a really important segment that we're going to close out with today. And then finally, we've got a couple of reminders that I want to share with you at the end of the briefing here today of things that we've covered in the past that I think perhaps maybe might have slipped off our desk here. So I want to put your mind back on them, so to remind you that over the summer, we got a little bit loose, we got a little bit free flowing, and now we got to go, oh yeah, I remember that. We talked about that before. So let's just cover a couple of quick points. They're just bullets at the end of the briefing today, and then we will close it out at the top of the hour. Well, thanks again for joining us today. I look forward to serving you over this next hour and having a good time, because remember, if you're not doing it and with a smile on your face, you're doing it wrong. This is what we say here on the briefing. So stick around, have some fun, relax, and let's learn together. Back in a flash. These are the things that we believe in. First, that parents have the right to raise their children the way they want. Second, that those we elect to serve us in civil government must respect and defend our right of belief and freedom of religion. Number three, that the laws and policies of civil government must provide for the safety and security of the citizens, especially the vulnerable among us. And number four, that it is inappropriate to heap debt upon the backs of our children and future generations. They came from you. They're your pillars. They're the things that you believe. Okay, let's get started with the 4 pillars. What a great place to start. Let's remind ourselves of the 4 pillars. But why do we want to remind ourselves of the 4 pillars? Because we want to get good at articulating them and sharing them with others. So now you know that I'm just going to go through this list again. You know I'm going to run them by you, but I want you to think about this while I'm running through this list, about how quickly you could get to the point of sharing these principles with others. Why? Because you will find that people around you agree with these principles that undergird the 4 pillars. You will find that people will be gravitating to you because they'll say to themselves, wait a second, you're right. If you and I work together on advancing these principles into the conversations that take place in society, culture, politics, and government, we can work together and grow our influence when these things are being discussed. Let me give you an example. The very first pillar is that we believe that parents have the right to raise their children the way they want. Now, this is very interesting because most people who are parents immediately pick up on this as being a key topic of discussion out there right now in schools and in families. There is this bit of a loggerhead going on right now between the state-run school system and families and parents. Parents are having to push back a bit when it comes to the things that they believe in being just cast aside by state-run schools and governments. So this is something that you can see easily is a rally point for conversations that you can have out there in your community with other parents, perhaps. Let's take a look at the second pillar. We've got that we believe when we come together as individual citizens, we believe that those we elect to serve us in civil government must respect and defend our right of belief and freedom of religion. Now, if you are someone who has a belief system and you're in a church and you believe what you believe for the reasons that you believe it, that could be very personal and not ones that you share with others, but you just want to have the right to believe what you believe, you would like to think that you're never, ever going to elect a person to sit in a government office that would try to strip that right of belief away from you. Or worse, allow someone else to attack you for what you believe in without standing up and defending you against those attacks. But it does happen in our nation. We elect government leaders all the time who not only do not stand to protect and preserve our right of belief, but do not defend it when it is attacked. So this is a very important point to those of us who believe dearly that our right of belief and freedom of religion must be protected and preserved and defended. So look out around you, take a look in your neighborhood. Is there anybody else around you that might share that same perspective? Those are potential allies for you when it comes to standing up for yourself and requiring that of your elected representatives. Now, the third pillar, let's take a look at the third pillar. We believe that the laws and policies that are enacted and passed by civil governments must provide for the safety and security of the citizens, especially the vulnerable that live among us in our communities. Now, as Christians here on the National Leadership Briefing and you in your homes, we know that we're called to be there for the vulnerable. We're called to stand in their defense, but we require it when we elect our civil government leaders and they pass laws. We require it as they are accountable to us, that they prioritize the protection of vulnerable people when passing laws. We have had several examples in our nation recently in the last few years where laws and policies have been passed that in fact they don't protect the vulnerable, and they go one step further. They harm individuals. Laws like euthanasia laws that have been passed in Canada without the adequate protections in place for those of us who are vulnerable. We also have marijuana laws in our nation that have been passed. We've also had family law that has been passed that has not protected vulnerable citizens. And also we've seen in provincial school systems, we've had policies put in place that are outright dangerous. Like, let me give you an example. You've got right now in any province across our nation, it's pretty much accepted that a school teacher or a school administrator within a school can diagnose and treat someone with complex gender dysphoria. And you could say, Doug, wait a second, that sounds a little bit obtuse. That's kind of hyperbolic, don't you think? Well, let me just propose this for you. In a school system, if a child goes into class and expresses that they have gender confusion and they're feeling uncomfortable about the biological body that they were born into, immediately there is a willingness by school administrators and teachers to affirm them in their confusion. Now, that is kind of interesting because these are people that oftentimes only have Bachelor of Education degrees, or maybe a school administrator doesn't have any education at all. However, they begin engaging in what is very obviously treatment for that complex gender confused person's dysphoria. And this is important that we acknowledge this, that these people not only are not qualified, but the policy of that is set by the school to step in and provide that treatment is allowing it to happen. So again, we're simply saying that if you are going to enact a policy or pass a law in our nation and you're a person in authority, we want you to prioritize the protection of vulnerable citizens that live among us, like our children. Now, that's a pretty popular thought. You could find a lot of people that will rally around you to stand with you and speak to that with you when it comes to that, for example, in the school system. And finally, the last one, which is not the least one, but it is the last one, is we believe that civil government should not just pile debt on the back of our children and future generations. When you think about it, when you spend money as a government that you do not have and you just stack up the debt, who's going to pay for that in the future? Well, it's going to be your children. They're going to pay for it in the form of taxes and levies, and your children are going to be in debt to civil government from a very young age. So what we're saying is that it's inappropriate that civil government heaps that debt upon our children and future generations. So they must be fiscally responsible and operate within their budgets. That's a very, very popular idea, I would think, for anyone who's got a family. So those are the four principles that undergird the four pillars, and we encourage you to know those because we want you to go out there and share them with others and see if there's not more people around you like you that want to engage in the National Leadership Briefing, and again, advance these thoughts into the conversations that take place in our political government and governmental realms. Okay, so let's talk about the National Leadership Briefing essential videos really quickly here before we move on to the next two segments. These again are four videos. 4 videos. One of them is the 4-pillar story, which talks about where these 4 pillars came from. The second one is called the Horizon Training video, which talks about us having a perspective out into the horizon that teaches us to maybe not look so much at our feet as to what's happening immediately around us, but trains us to look out further out to see what's coming at us in the way of opportunities and threats so that we can assess them and prepare to greet them or prepare to defend against them, right? So that's the Horizon Training video. But we also have something called the U Training video and the Sphere Authority Training video. Now, I'm going to show you a piece of the Sphere Authority Training video, and I want you to just watch this one little segment, knowing that it's not the entire video, but it talks a little bit about the different realms in our society or other governments that are parts of our society. Specifically, one of them is the family. So watch this quick video, because we're going to talk with a special guest right after this, who's going to talk about the role of men and fathers within the family and some of the challenges that they're facing and some of the solutions that we can provide with his project and the one that we're going to be presenting here today. Okay, so let's watch this quick video excerpt from the Sphere Authority Training video, and then come right back and introduce you to our special guest today. So we get together as citizens during an electoral process, and we gather our authority together as citizens, and we communicate or convey it to civil government so that they can execute a plan that we have approved of at election time. That is where civil government gets its authority. Now in Canada, the sphere of authority and the jurisdictional limit of that authority is defined by documents like our Constitution. Our Constitution clearly lays out the provincial government's authority, the federal government's authority, and we can refer to those foundational documents in our society. We also have something called the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, which actually is intended to protect the citizen from civil government, and we can reference that document to make sure that we are having civil government operate within its appropriate sphere of influence. Now, the only time that anyone would ever cross over and beyond their jurisdictional limit of their authority is with something we call here at the National Leadership Briefing permissions. That is right, permissions. So for example, if a family as a form of government granted permission to the church to speak into or have authority within their family, then they would grant the church permission to actually operate outside of its jurisdictional limit of its authority and have influence in the family. As an individual, we actually give up some of our authority to participate as individuals within a family. And of course, with civil government, though, because we grant them special permissions, or special authority, pardon me, we don't grant them special permissions. Because we grant them special authority, we are in fact granting them permissions to operate outside of their jurisdictional limit of authority so that they can actually influence and impact our lives in a positive way. But what happens if, and this is the key question, is what happens if civil government reaches out beyond its jurisdictional limit of its authority and gets engaged in the church sphere, the family sphere, and sphere of the individual? What if they do that without permissions and without a mandate? So in other words, they're not given a mandate to act in this way. They're not granted special permissions to act in this way, yet they use the power, the special powers that we grant them through an election in the form of a mandate. They use that power in a corrupt way, and they impose their authority on the church, on families, and on the individuals. What is that called? Well, that is called tyranny. So if a civil government is operating outside of a jurisdictional limit of its authority, and it is imposing itself on other spheres of authority, like other governments in society, like these ones that are illustrated here, then they're acting in what we call a tyrannical way. Okay, so let's consider that. We've got 4 very distinct governments that make up the governments of our society. Now, oftentimes we think of like civil government as the only government, but no, it's very clear. We have self-government, our own individual selves. We've got church government and family government as well, all having jurisdictional limits of authority to their authority. However, that civil government oftentimes expands out beyond its jurisdictional limit of the proper authority that it should have and imposes itself on the family. And it does so and is allowed to do so oftentimes because the leaders and of the family, the mothers and the fathers, perhaps don't have all the tools that they need to identify what their true roles and responsibilities are and what they are supposed to be doing within the family. Well, this is why I love our next guest so much. And the work that he's doing is because he is very, very clear about the role of men and fathers within the family. And he just has a heart to come alongside those families and to assist them in establishing for themselves a way to move forward as biblically defined fathers in their families. So let's not waste any time. Let's bring out Neil Campbell of the Family Dream Institute and the Mighty Man Network. Well, thank you so much, Neil, for joining us here today. It's good to have you on the briefing once again. How have you been?
Good. It's been a busy summer, having lots of time with the family, doing a Mighty Man event a couple weekends ago. And the last week we were in Saskatchewan, visit my mother-in-law, and now we're kind of back home and we're ready for the fall.
Excellent, excellent. Well, our timing couldn't be better because not only do we have another Mighty Man event coming up, but before we get to that, we've also got all kinds of opportunities to share the good news, the information that you have
Mhm.
regarding assisting men in their roles and fathers in their roles within their families in this very complex and sometimes hard to navigate situation we're in society here. We're talking today, as you know, about the authority of the family and the importance of that all-important role of men and fathers in the family. And you
Mhm.
bring a lot to the table in the way of knowledge. You've just completed recently your doctoral thesis on what are men doing to disciple their families.
Right.
And so why don't we start there with perhaps some of the challenges that men are having before we get into the details of the Mighty Man Network. What are some of the challenges that our men are having? And why don't I turn my screen over to you and you can walk us through your slide deck a bit here to frame the conversation of why it's so important that we focus on this.
This is just my research question, is equipping men to be spiritual leaders in their home, and I just completed it in March of this year. My doctoral research questions were, what are men doing to disciple the next generation to be followers of Jesus with a biblical worldview? And, as I interviewed and did the research, talked with pastors, talked with men, just really began to see what are men doing to do that discipleship. And then the second question that I asked as I interviewed pastors and leaders across Canada is, what is the church doing to equip men to fulfill their mission? And the scriptural basis for our research is Malachi 4:6. He will turn the hearts of the fathers to the children and the hearts of the children to their fathers. And what I found is that men are, from what the research is showing, is that the next generation, most men aren't sure of what to do. The research showed me that 85% of men don't have a structured and a planned discipleship process to teach their children a biblical worldview and to live a Christian lifestyle. And for the most part, men have lost the job description and didn't really know that that's what their job was to do. And I think really they're feeling overwhelmed by just how different the culture is. And how do I navigate this? They're not sure of their role in leadership even within the family unit. And so they've just kind of abandoned that and they've lost that job description. That's really what we see the state of fatherhood in Canada, is that 85% of Christians have a pluralistic worldview. So really what that means, Doug, is that many young people or young men, young families, they have a believe in Jesus, but they've been discipled by the world's, and they have a pluralistic worldview. So they see both God, his word, but then they're confused because they have a pluralistic worldview that doesn't necessarily line up with scripture themselves. Again, the research, 85% of them are doing nothing to disciple their children. They may send them to a Christian school or a youth group. But again, what I found in the research is that those are great things where kids are going to good foundation. But our role as dads is to teach, train, and bless our kids, because the family is really where the governmental role of a father is to be the head of the home with his wife to disciple their children. As men struggle with this, what are pastors supposed to do to equip men to disciple their families? What can the church do to do that? And really what I felt is, as I pastored for many years, is that the family must be the base of all church ministry. Out of all that research, what I found is what we need to do is to help equip men. How can we do that? How can we equip the church? And I really don't see us as an outside entity to the church. I see us coming alongside the church to help build a network of men right across the country that are able to disciple their families. But before we can do that, I really felt that as I looked at it, is that most men, and some of the stats said up to 90% of men don't have a close Christian friend or brother or mentor that they can turn to in times of crisis, or help them, guide them through this journey of trying to be a dad in the world today. And so really what the Lord downloaded to us as part of the solution is the Mighty Man Network, and where we gather men together in groups of 5 points. So you have 5 guys in a group, and they're doing life together, but they're connected to other groups across the country in a relational way. In those groups, what we like to do is just share life, what's happening in your life, to connect at a heart level. So you go beyond what's happening with your marriage or with your family, with your kids. You go, what's going on inside of my heart? And then we're there to support. And then we need to base everything on God's word. So as we meet in that group, what is God speaking to you about? What's God speaking to the other person? And when we're sharing life, we say, you know what? This is what the word of God says on this situation, on biblical worldview, or on gender, or on whatever. So we just share God's word, and then we do warfare prayer together. The idea of warfare prayer isn't just praying, oh God, just pray for Doug today. God, just help him to have a good day. No, Lord, we stand in the gap today for Doug. Lord, we stand for him, like God, that you're going to open up the ministry. God, you're going to strengthen his relationship with Sally. We just pray, God, your blessing today. And we stand in the gap today for him. And so as we train the men how to do warfare prayer, they're able to support one another. Our vision is that we want to equip men right across the country to be able to have that kind of relationship, so that what they can support first their family, then they can support their church, and then they can make an impact in their community. So we have a monthly meeting, and in those online trainings, what we do is we have Mighty Man testimonies, people sharing, build kingdom relationships. And we always have a mission possible challenge. This is your mission should you choose to accept it. Because what I found is that guys like to have a challenge. And so we will have a mission this month. Your mission this month is to teach your children about a biblical view of gender. And then we will actually have advanced leadership training with a 5 to 7 minute teaching that actually gives you some ideas of how you can bring up the conversation, what are some of the biblical worldview on this teaching, give them some scriptures, and give them some helps to be able to do it. And then we wrap up our monthly meeting with some prayer and a blessing time. And what we say is, any man that is a leader, because somebody's always following you, and you're invited to be on this call. And it's really the job description for a dad is to teach, train, and bless their kids. You teach them by your example, you train them up in God's word, and then you bless their identity, you bless their gender, and you bless their destiny. So you can check us out on our website. Here it is, the Family Dream Institute.ca. Resources, the Mighty Man Network. And that really will get you to learn a lot more. You can sign up there to be part of the network. You can sign up for our next meeting, which is going to be this Tuesday, September the 10th. 2024, and you can get the link back on this website here. That's pretty well everything.
Oh man, does it ever make sense to you? And full disclosure, I am a member of an M5 network group. I'm a member of your network group, happily. And so I just want to address a couple of things that you talked about here. So first, you started off with that the reference to the M5 network, those 5 guys getting together on a regular basis. I got to tell you, my personal experience is that at first I didn't get it. I didn't understand the importance and the value of setting aside that 1 hour once a week to connect up with other men, until I really discovered not only how much I needed it when I came across things that I could then share. I could actually share the burden of things that I was working through or considering or dealing with other guys that I had actually built relationships with. That proved to be so invaluable to me
Mhm.
to have those relationships there. Even if at first you don't quite understand or see the value for those men who are on the call today, I'm telling you, it proved itself up to me. Then
Mhm.
then the second thing you talked about, those monthly leadership calls. You've got these five guys that are doing life together. They're connecting at the heart level. They're learning how to about each other and building those relationships. But then you're now growing your network and your relationships with other men in a
Right.
broader sense and receiving. I have to say, a key part of that, Neil, is your leadership in the training and the teaching that you bring to those calls. So
Mhm.
that September call, and then the next October call, and all of these calls that are going to be coming up once a month, those are valuable calls for men to be on as well. And now, finally, I just want to bring it around to this. What I wanted to also share today was the importance of these mighty man camps. Now, you mentioned that you just come from one, but I know there's another one coming up, and I want to share the details with everyone about these mighty man camps, what generally speaking, what goes on, but also the details of this next camp that you've got coming up in Caroline, Alberta. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so we're going to be at Clearwater College, September the 27th to the 29th. And we start on a Friday night. Everybody gets there. We've got dorm situations. People can register online. I'll send the link over to you so you can put it on for people to register. And really, it's designed for young men from 12 to 80 plus. It's designed for single men, it's designed for older men, it's designed for dads with sons. And one of our special guest speaker this year is going to be Steve Holmstrom, and he's bringing a couple of his sons. And we actually have part of the weekend designated as a father-son rite of passage, where we bring and call forth the boys into manhood. But we also deal with several other topics on going deeper with the father, um, learning to walk in our own lives. And this year, it really felt like we're going to deal with Gideon, teach on Gideon, and talk about uh, defeating or breaking down the altars or the false altars in our life. Gideon, he destroyed and broke down the altars of his father. And how do we break down those altars? What are those altars? And then how do we build an altar to the Lord? So it's going to be a great time. It's going to be one of our best ones yet. And we're looking forward to seeing you there, Doug, and a lot of other men. And men, if you're coming and maybe you don't have a son, or um, you want to kind of mentor some other young men, we'll have some of our college students there that won't have a father figure, that you can be a part of that weekend, or bring somebody else, bring a nephew, bring a friend's son that can come and join you for this weekend. It's going to be a great time. Blessing. It's going to be a great time of fun. We've got all kinds of great activities, from arrows and shooting from the back of a horse. And we're doing all kinds of fun things at Adela. Doug is actually the expert bowsman in our group. So good to have you on. And anybody that wants to come, we just hope that you can click on that link that Doug's going to give you, and you can be a part of this great weekend.
Awesome. And now don't delay on clicking at that link when you look to the post briefing notes today, everyone, because it is happening at the end of this month, as Neil mentioned. It's in Alberta, so you might have to arrange some travel. So don't delay, but definitely go to that link and register. We would love to have you. I still have very fond memories, Neil, of last year's Mighty Man Camp. I'm looking forward to it again this year. And I thank you so much, Neil, for joining us today and sharing just the information that's going to be helpful for men to navigate, fathers and men to navigate. It's, as I
Mhm.
said in the beginning, it's complex out there, and having resources and tools to work with, boy, that's sure helpful. Thanks so
Yeah.
much, Neil. I appreciate your time today.
Okay. We'll talk to you later, Doug.
Okay, so that is our look at the Sphere Authority training template and the project that can help fathers within families within that sphere of authority. So Let's move on to the U training video and the project that I want to introduce you to that a group of people have been working on. I'm on a team, a group of people have been working on this project for a while, and it isn't fully ready to launch, but I wanted to give you a sneak peek, kind of pull the curtain back a bit and give you a chance to jump on board with us as we put the final pieces in place of what we call the Rebuilders Network. Now, I'm going to share my screen with you in just a moment, but just let me set this up for you. Again, let me remind you, we encourage you, first of all, to get on your knees and pray to God to reveal what your purpose is on this earth, because you are saved for a reason. You find out what that is from Him. I don't tell you that. I'm not going to deliver that to you. You've got to do that for yourself. However, when you get that confirmation inside of you as to who you are in Christ and what He wants you to do with your call and your gifts here on earth, and if in any way we can help you with that, we want to be there for you. So one way that we can help you with that is that if your heart is to serve others and to be engaged with other people, we want to make sure other people can find you, that you are discoverable by other people and part of a network of people that are all working together, because we believe that some people have special gifts and callings over here and some people have special gifts and calling over here, but we all come together for the common good, the overall good, to advance the kingdom of God here on this earth. So this is the reason why we do what we do. And this project, as I say, not finished yet, but we're in that final stages of rolling it out. This project is going to help do that. So let me show you how you can actually get on the list to walk through this final phase with us and be kept up to date as to how it's going and when you can start deploying and engaging with this Rebuilders Network. Let me share my screen with you now and I'll show you what I mean. Okay, here we are on the rebuildersnetwork.org website. I'll make sure you have this web address in the post-briefing notes for today, but it's rebuildersnetwork.org. First thing you'll see here is that it is a Canada-US project, that there are people working on this project on our core leadership team from both sides of the border. We believe that it's a North America-wide initiative that we're launching here. So we have been working to connect up people from both Canada and the United States. If you scroll down a little bit further, you're going to see where you come in here when it comes to identify. We help identify and bring together subject matter experts in applied biblical worldview and connect them with like-minded organizations and individuals in your local community. We believe, remember, as I said before, you are someone who has special gifts and a special call that is only yours. You are very unique, and we would like to know who you are, and we would like to know what God is saying to you, because there are other people out there that want to work collaboratively with you. We don't know specifically what that is, so we want you to come aboard, join, just let us know who you are, and let us and follow along on this path with us, because we're going to start connecting you up with other people. Because it then goes on to say here, we then facilitate the creation of strategic coalitions that work together to successfully deploy issue-specific kingdom initiatives in your community. Let me give you an example. If you have a heart for your local community in your town, there are other people in neighboring towns and cities that share that same heart. Some of them may be deploying very successful initiatives that are working very well that you could learn from, or you may have some great ideas to contribute to the conversation as well from experiences that you've had in your local community. So these are the reasons why, or one of the reasons why, we want to make sure that you are discoverable by others. It goes on to say here, our touch point is the local church. We train, network, and empower Christian leaders to come together and be the physical, emotional, and spiritual anchor God has called His church to be. However, we do this acknowledging the authority of the local church leadership and your role and your authority and the jurisdictional limits of your authority locally. We want to honor that and make sure that we're working collaboratively with your local leaders as well. So this isn't trying to take you away from what you're already doing and take you someplace else. We want you to stay where you're at with doing what you're doing. We just want to make sure that others can find you as they need you. So here it is right here. You can enter your name and address On the bottom here, you can put in your organization name if there is one and your email address. And at this point in time, we just want to make sure that you're on the list so that you can receive the updates from the Rebuilders Network as we can finish working on the website and the project launch comes down the road. So again, at this point in time, we're under construction. We're still on the road to finalizing the project, but your presence on the list so that we can keep you up to date as to how we're going to roll out the launch is really important that you get on that list. So, hey, get on your knees, pray to God, make sure you're clear on what exactly it is that God wants you to do, because we want to make you again discoverable by others. Okay, well, let's just take a quick break then. I hope you do take me up on that. The post briefing notes will have that web address and that place where you can sign up. But I sure want to know who you are. I want to know some more details about you. This is really important, especially as I said at the beginning of the briefing today. I believe that the road is going to get complex down through these fall months here on the road ahead, and we really need to know about each other. We need to be able to find each other and to help each other and to serve each other in very special ways. So let's make sure we participate in that. Okay, we're going to take a quick break, and then I'm going to come back with and introduce you to a friend of mine who works on Parliament Hill, who's got a fantastic book for you to add to your library. All right, back in a moment. Well, that, of course, is my friend Craig Docksteader, a Parliament Hill employee and really a great guy, author of this new book. Looking forward to sharing Craig with you now. Well, thanks so much, Craig, for joining us here today on the National Leadership Briefing. I appreciate it. How have you been, brother?
Doing well, Doug. It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for inviting me to hop on here with you for a little bit. Lots
Well,
to talk about.
yeah, I had to invite you. You go right into such a great book, and I'm going to definitely be giving you a call. So we got to get the word out there. Now, hey, so to shift a nation, before we get into the actually, so because I've got lots of things I want to share about the book with, you, I want to hear from you on. But I want people to know a little bit about where you came from and what kind of brought you to this place where you would bring forward and put together this what I consider to be a really important work as far as the book goes. So, but let's start with where you came from, Craig. Lay it down
Yeah,
for us.
sure. That's a long story, Doug. So cut me off if you need to.
Okay.
But really, it spanned like 30 years. I started out pastoring. God called me to the ministry. I felt like I was going to spend the rest of my life there. But about 8 years in, God transitioned me into the marketplace, specifically with nonprofit organizations. And it was there that I began to have to deal with when you want to make change as an organization. So, nothing to do with the church or Christianity, just as an organization, you want to change a policy, what works and what doesn't work. So I worked with three different nonprofit organizations, all in this sort of public advocacy role. And those stories, I go into them a little bit in the book. But that really began to get my attention because what we found, just to kind of jump into it, is that if you can change what people, their understanding, what they believe, their beliefs and their values, that will result in public policy change. But if you try to change public policy without first addressing people's beliefs, values, fears, anxieties, it's not going to work. And then I went to work on Parliament Hill about 10, 12 years ago. And that's been an interesting journey on its own. So now on this side of the, whatever we want to call it, fence and whatever. So no longer trying to make change, convince politicians to do things, but being on this side, working in Parliament as a staffer for MP, then for senators. and seeing how the church views change and their attempts to make change and some of the mistakes that we've been making, and all these things were stirring in my heart. And I began to do a little bit of writing, a little bit of teaching, a little, but I always found that I had way more information than I did time. So that's where the book came along. But I need to get this down in a book where someone can take it and go through it from A to Z, where I'm not just, giving little tidbits here and there in a half hour, an hour here and there. As good as those are, getting it into the book was just really, really helpful for me to use it as a tool where I can, get it into people's hands and say, look, read this. It's going to turn some lights on for you.
Well, I'm sure glad, because there are lights going on all over the place for those who are reading the book. So let's get into the book here a bit. One of the things about the book that I thought was fascinating, and now that you explained sort of where you came from and the perspective that you had going into writing the book, this makes a lot of sense. You talk about the top-down approach to change, to affecting change, or the organic bottom up, or the sort of the groundswell change that comes from down below. Just explain the difference between those two, the way you presented the book, because I really think this is important as a key for people moving forward who want to see that change happen.
Yeah, the book lays out a bit of a diagram about how change happens. It can happen fast, or it can happen slow, and it can happen from the top down, or it can happen from the bottom up. So top down change is, well, if the government puts me in jail, the police put me in jail, that's top down change in my life. They have imposed something on me. When the government passes a law of any sort, that's top down change. Bottom up change is when, can happen for a number of reasons, but it usually happens because what people believe changes, their values change, their understanding changes. And so the change comes from the grassroots up and then is reflected in public policy. Now, we have actually seen this in society. Like, Christians are concerned about where society is at in Canada. But the mistake we make is thinking that we are where we at because government has passed laws allowing this and that and the other thing. What we need to understand is the reason they were able to pass those laws is because there had been change taking place at the grassroots level. There's belief systems and broad values that have changed to allow that allows people to not just accept but actually endorse various lifestyles, laws, etc., that Christians find conflict with Christian values. So the solution is not to say, well, we need a different prime minister, even though I'll be honest with you, Doug, I believe we do, but that's not the solution to the problem. It's not just changing the political parties, not just having more Christian members of parliament. It actually starts with the change at the grassroots level. That's key. That's critical to the process of change.
Well, I would have to agree with you, of course, here on the National Leadership Briefing, because we talk about values. You can see right behind me here, the 4 pillars. These are the principles that we rally around here. We talk about parental authority and helping people to understand the importance of seeing things from God's perspective, and why it is that we do what we do, the way we do it, because that understanding does serve as a great foundation for change. Absolutely. So this is a great tool. Now, you make a comment in the book. I've got to bring this up. I've got to bring this up because I believe that you and I both may hear this quite a bit, where people will stand up and go, hey, wait a second, we are a Christian nation. And and it's almost like, rather than kind of going the approach of being wise about how you affect change, you almost claim or assert what you consider to be a right to stamp our nation of Canada as a Christian nation. But you help people to understand something that I believe is a little bit more truthful and accurate about that. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, we need an hour for this one right there, Doug. But briefly, when people say that, they usually refer to one of two things, or maybe both. One, they look at the origins of Canada and they say, look, that if you go back to actually census in 1861, it shows that 97% of Christians claim to be Canadians claim to be Christian in 1861. So it was, Catholic, evangelical, Protestant, but they claim to be Christian. So, and then that was reflected in some of our founding documents. That was reflected in the Constitution Act, 1867. It's reflected in a number of different things. So Christians tend to say, look, we are a Christian nation because we were founded on Christian principles. And like you say, that somehow gives a right that now we should demand that be retained as a nation, sort of like some kind of legal or constitutional right. So that's one thing they look at. The other thing they look at is they say, well, according to Census Canada, 53.3% of Canadians still claim to be Christians. So we are predominantly a Christian nation. So therefore, we should be able to control the narrative, the laws, the election outcomes, etc. So the problem with the first one is that although the nation was predominantly Christian in terms of belief systems and practices, we were not and are not a Christian state. So Christianity influenced the nation. It didn't like drive the nation, didn't have a hold of the steering wheel and set it, but it influenced the nation. Because people were Christian, it influenced the laws. It influenced the Constitution. And that's what I'm saying. We need to understand that's the same way things work now. If we have, if we can, like salt and leaven in society, if we can change society, we will change the laws. The problem is that 53.3%, that's in the 2021 census, when you start to drill down, and an organization called Cardis did some pretty good work on this earlier this year, where you find out that actually when you take it down to who actually of those Christians, who actually has biblical Christian beliefs. Jesus Christ is the Son of God. He is God. He came in the flesh, etc. Sort of the basic tenets of Christianity. It comes down to about 6%. So we may have 53.3% of people who tick the box on the census form saying, yeah, I'm Christian because my parents or whatever. But those who are actually have a relationship with Jesus Christ is closer to 6%. So no matter which way you look at it, we don't have a lever to drive the outcomes in this nation. And frankly, even if we did, we shouldn't be using it because the results of that are not beneficial. I kind of refer to it as the Christian Taliban. Like we would be imposing our beliefs on everybody. Right. I think the gospel requires us to focus on changing the hearts and minds of people so that then those become reflected in the laws.
Oh, that's so good. That's so good. And that's why I love the title of the book, To Shift a Nation, but then it's how Christians, it says on the cover, can effectively promote change, but it compels us to actually present our case, present our ideas, and engage in conversations about it, and as opposed to, as you say, imposing it on someone else. I believe, and I know you do too, is that we believe our ideas can compete. We believe that our ideas can transform and have a positive influence on the lives of our neighbor and our nation as a whole. So to effectively know how to promote them, which is what your book presents, is really, that's why I believe it's such a good tool to put in the hands of people today in Canada.
Yeah, it's eye-opening. I mean, everybody wants to see the nation shift. Everybody wants to see change, but there's a fair amount of uncertainty about, well, what's the best way to do that? And you hear different ideas, and some people will read the book and perhaps disagree with parts of it, and that's fine too. It's to start a discussion and to lay out some ideas that maybe people have not thought of before. And I try to be pretty solid in the scriptural background as to how this is supported by scripture, but also in practical. My experience in nonprofit organizations, my experience working for people in government and opposition and government, all of that has kind of laid a foundation for me that I really feel there's something here we need to get a hold of as the church in Canada.
Well, let me help you do that, Craig, because I agree with you. I think that this is something that should be in people's hands. So this is what I'm going to do today is I'm going to make sure that we have a link in the post-briefing notes. All of you that are on the briefing here today, if you're registered for the briefing, you'll receive after the briefing the post-briefing notes. Check for the link that will take you directly to a place where you can order this book. Now, I'm not suggesting that you just pick up one copy of this book. Remember, you're a member of a church family, that you should get one for your church library, you get one for your pastor, get one for the people you care about. And remember, we're building coalitions of people who are basically people that share our views and values. It wouldn't hurt if everyone had a copy of this book for their library as well. So thank you so much, Craig, for giving us the opportunity to talk about this book today. And it's an important work. We're really, really happy to have an opportunity to share that with the people we serve here.
Well, thank you, Doug. It's been a real pleasure, and I appreciate all the work you guys do at the National Leadership Briefing. And I just pray God continues to bless you guys and see you really feel like you're being very effective.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Have a great day, Craig.
You too.
Okay, so check those post-briefing notes today to make sure that you receive the link to find out where to grab that book, a copy. Remember, for yourself and others, don't forget, you can buy multiple copies. I also want to draw your attention to something else I'm going to be putting in the post-briefing notes today for Craig is there is a place where you can provide a review. After you get your book, after you read it, go back online, do a Google review. These things are really important to place the book higher up in the visibility category. So when you do a review of the book for Craig online, extremely helpful. Don't forget to do that as well. All right, so look also to the post-briefing notes today for information about the Mighty Man Network. That's the M5 groups that are available, the monthly meetings, and Mighty Man camps. The next one coming up in Caroline, Alberta, at the end of the month, at the end of September. That's also going to be in the post-briefing notes. And of course, the NLB Essentials videos. We're going to make sure they're available for you to share. You want to get them out to other people so that you can grow the number of people you're in touch with locally, growing your influence because you have an increased voice. More voices, more influence. So make sure you do that as well. All right, so look to the post-briefing notes for that as well. Well, we're done for the day. Just want to throw in a couple of quick things before I leave. One is I want to remind you that Citizen Action Group ministries in churches are effective. This is the infrastructure that we can help you build in your church to help your pastor and your church leadership navigate. As I said at the very beginning, I'm going to say it again, it's going to get complicated out there in the next little while, and having a Citizen Action Group ministry in your local church supporting the efforts of your pastor is going to be a real big help, but you got to build it now. You want to make sure before the waters come, you have your ark built. And that is what's going to help you be. If you get in touch with us, let us know what we can do to help that. My information is on the website, but you can also contact me at president@familyaction.ca. That's president@familyaction.ca. And finally, one last thing, if you like what we do here on the National Leadership Briefing and you want to partner with us in any amount, we would welcome it. Right now, we've got inflation going up, people's expenses are going up, and what happens is that as people have less and less money, our donations tend to drop off a bit. So what I'm asking for is new partners to come forward and support our efforts here on the briefing. I'm going to put a link in the post-briefing notes for that as well as to how you can partner with the Canada Family Action, obviously, and the National Leadership Briefing. So thanks so much for your consideration of that as well. All right, well, that's it for today. Thank you so much for your time. I look forward to next month's briefing and for seeing you there and the friends that you bring. In the meantime, though, know that I will continue to pray for you. I will continue to pray for your family and, of course, our great nation of Canada. Bye for now.
The bear has been poked. It's time to wake up from our slumber
and stand together, united as one. One family, one body, one church.
We will not walk past the vulnerable.
Say nothing, do nothing, and turn a blind eye.
We are citizens of a great nation.
We are good Samaritans to our neighbors. You are not alone.
We are the largest unified voice in Canada. So we stand united. This is our rally cry. We are Christ to our nation. This is our battle cry. He shall have dominion from sea to sea, and from the river unto the ends of the earth. Righteousness will reign. Justice will prevail. We are united.